So as you know, we just recently experienced freelance Trials of Osiris, and yeah, a lot of people actually liked it. But there were still a lot of people that didn't like it. They found that going in solo was just still too stressful. So guys, I wanted to take today's video to really just narrow down to some tips on how to traverse Trials of Osiris as a solo player. Again, these will all be timestamped down below, so feel free to skip to these tips. A word from our sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends. Ah yes, Raid back again, the MMO that you all know about that possesses so many challenges within its game. One of those challenges is actually Raid's in-game Doom Tower. Fellas, this is essentially a giant tower. Think Prison of Elders from Destiny 1. And in the regular floors of Doom Tower, they tend to be pretty easy. But the bosses is where it really starts to get tough. And you start to need some serious specialists if you're going to beat them. Some tower bosses ignore block debuffs, and they can do real nasty stuff to your champions, like draining their turn meters or stripping their buffs. A couple bosses need specific mechanics to actually beat them, like the Scarab King, where he barely takes any damage unless you reduce his max HP. And if you attack him without a shield buff on, he'll wreck your whole team instantly. Guys, if you're interested in this game right now, this is a really good month to play Raid. It's got a non-stop schedule of special events and activities with an absolutely jam-packed Halloween lineup, towards end of the month rewards, tournaments against other players, special fragment events to get some brand new legendary champions, including one very spooky Halloween champion, and much more. Again, guys, for those that want to get a head start on Raid, down below is a link, or you can actually scan the QR code on your screen and you'll get things like the epic hero Konoro, 200,000 silver, an XP booster, energy refills, and an ancient shard, so you can summon awesome champions as soon as you get into the game. Big shout out to Raid Shadow Legends. Now back to the video. All right, guys, starting with tip number 1 on how to play as a solo player: kill everything. Tip 2, don't die. Now that we've gotten those 2 tips out of the way, which by the way are the universal tips for everything, for every game actually, and if you can just start there, I can promise you that will really carry you through all content inside of Destiny 2. But let's get down to more specifics, starting with tip number 3. Try and key in on the weapons that you perform the best with. And this can be anything. Right now, you're seeing me run around with Ariana's Vow and popping shots off on enemies. And it looks like it would be a terrible loadout for Trials, but it works for me, and more specifically, it works for me in solo play. The kind of builds that I like to bring inside of Trials are builds that can A, catch my opponents off guard, and B, play some sort of support role for my teammates, which is why I'm rocking the Stag right here. Placing a rift down, sitting in that rift, offering damage resist, buffing damage to get the 1-tap with an SMG swap off. This is a build that allows me to pretty much cover all the weak areas that can be exposed if my teammates throw around. And that is something that's gonna happen when playing with blueberries. Which takes us to tip number 4. Arguably one of the most important things you can do in a Trials match is to not get tilted, and more specifically, not get tilted with your teammates, especially other solo players. The last thing you should do is jump on the mic and start jumping down somebody's throats because maybe they threw the round before. I can promise you, fellas, nothing good will come from it. And if anything, it will only make things worse. If you do get on the mic and you do talk to people, talk to them in a way that is friendly and just offer suggestions. If you even offer that. Normally, I don't even like to offer suggestions. I just go, hey man, this next round, could you come with me over here to this choke point or this spot? I'm gonna try popping a rift right there and we can stand in it together. The alternative comment would have been, hey man, you need to be in my rift this next round because you keep going in and dying in the same spot. You see the difference here, guys? It's how you talk to your teammates that ultimately will affect how they perform, and it will also affect how you perform. And understand the main goal right now is for you to win the match. So whether your blueberry is a bayberry or a potato, it doesn't matter. You need them. Which takes us to tip number 5. Honestly, if you follow this tip, you really won't have to discuss much with your teammates. And that is just simply playing with your team. In the beginning of a round, if you see 2 of your teammates go left, this is not the time for you to be a hero and go right. You want to go left with them. Trials is very much a team activity. And even though going for flanks can prove to be fruitful, there are many times, especially considering the map, where flanks could result in your team getting killed. Which actually takes me to tip number 6. Let's talk about flanks for just a moment. Flanks should never be repeated. Flanks should also never be a priority. Guys, Trials is a team-oriented game mode. There are so many times, and I've seen it when going in solo, where players go for the flank, and they go for the long flank, and it takes them so long to even go on the flank that either A, the enemy team recognizes recognizes it way in advance and they proceed to collapse on the flank and kill that guy, leaving us in a 2v3 situation. Or worse, the enemy team recognizes that we're down a member and they push us instead, killing us and turning it into a 1v3. You see where this is an issue. Flanks are something that I really only like to incorporate when there is a stalemate. The rest of the time, I'm playing with my teammates. Which takes us to tip number 7. Guys, how you control the map will win you games. There's a lot of different maps, guys, where if you just control a point and win that point, you will have a huge advantage over your enemy. Now, the target area to control is normally always the area that has the cap point located there. This is an area that will put pressure on your enemy because even if the round does go the full minute and a half, if your enemy is not actively pushing, they will be at a huge disadvantage as you and your blueberries will already be present on that cap point, thus making the enemy come to you. Now, some maps are worse about it than others. Some maps automatically kind of put you at a disadvantage depending on your spawn. I use Shores of Time 2.0 as a great example for this, but in my opinion, A spawn is the weaker spawn, whereas C spawn, to me, is much easier to defend. It's easier to get the B in time and get set up. You can also challenge anything that peeks you from dark, and realistically, just having that spawn advantage for that round could actually make you decide whether or not you should change things up. For instance, if I didn't feel comfortable with my teammates and I pushing from A side to B and challenging from dark and stuff, then maybe I need to communicate to my teammates that, hey, we need to rotate to C and come around the backside of their spot. Again, another way to navigate to that control point and gain an advantage. Just to keep things simple though, stay with your teammates and try to fight it out and win the area that has the control point present on it. Tip number 8, don't overexpose yourself, but simultaneously don't play too cautious. Guys, if you got teammates that are busting out gunfire left and right and they are engaging, this is a perfect time for you to trade out with that teammate when they are peeking in and out of cover if you're standing next to them, or to just finally expose yourself to help your teammate get that pick. There's been a lot of times that I've seen teammates kind of send them back and they're just like waiting for that enemy to peek their lane, despite hearing all the gunfire that is taking place right next to them. If they would have just peeked, even with a primary weapon, they could have got a pick. Your engagement isn't everything, and your team that is actively engaging with the enemy needs backup. The alternative is if you don't peek and your teammate that's in there trying to get a kill gets killed, it's only going to ensure the enemy team will easily clean you up afterwards. Tip number 9, be willing to play whatever role you have to play. There will be times in a match that you have to be the aggressor, or you'll have to play support, or you'll have to be the guy that always picks up heavy when it's heavy round. You see, I like builds, I like going inside of trials, and I like having these strategies in my head. But there are some times when your strategy just gets shat on, and it's in these moments that you have to pivot. You have to change some things up. Always be willing to be flexible. Always be willing to pick up even the smallest of slack, whether that's remembering to play the objective whenever it pops up for cap, or picking up heavy, or even matching your teammates and their aggression. If you've got a teammate that's running in there and they're landing a Doom Marcher melee every single time and getting all the enemy team nearly one shot, fellas, don't sit there and go, oh my God, my blueberry is an idiot for charging. That won't win you the round. Go in with him. Try to clean up everything with him. I feel like we have a tendency when playing trials to kind of like look at the match and go, oh, so-and-so messed up, that's why we lost. That's not the play here, fellas. It's a we thing. Always is. And that's the only way you're really going to have success in trials. You got to ask yourself, how could we have done that better? Which takes us to our final tip here. Tip number 10, guys. Take a break. I'm serious here. We've mentioned it before inside of competitive, way back when folks were trying to go for Luna's How. Listen, if you start losing matches, and I even do it, guys, if I lose 3 matches in a row, I'm done. That's pretty much my gaming session for at least trials at that moment. I'll go play some strikes. I'll go play some Grandmasters. Hell, I might even load up Gambit. But trials, after losing 3 matches in a row, fellas, there's a certain level of tilt that you will accumulate with every single loss, especially if they were nail biters. Even if you are just the calmest kumbaya person in the world, you're still going to be a little irritated. And that will play a role in your later matches and will accumulate heavily if you start racking up loss after loss. My suggestion always, whether it's competitive or trials as a solo player, you hit 3 losses in a row, you either call it a day or at least give yourself an hour break. Considering most people's schedules and how much time you even have to even game, don't spend it, guys, going into trial matches over and over, racking up losses left and right and getting tilted at the game. My last and final bonus tip, this should definitely be something a lot of people already know about, but don't die getting your teammates rest. I bring this up because back in D1, getting the rest was such a priority because it would give you such a chunky overshield, or at least throughout the animation of the rest. You would actually have to wait until the overshield went away to get the snipe off. But in Destiny 2, no. Your teammate will just get sniped right in front of you if you go in for the rest, and you'll just be sitting there farming your teammate. My suggestion, guys, if your teammate goes down, use them as bait, man. Just wait. There's a good chance the enemy team will try to push up to that rest point as to keep you from getting on top of it, and this is a perfect opportunity for you to get one of them picked. So guys, that is my tips for Trials. Good luck. Hopefully, the freelance playlist will become a permanent one inside of Trials. Well, fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
Slap that like button like your mama told you right.